Hello and welcome everybody. Today's webinar is titled Got OBIEE, Learn How to Automate Your Testing with ELV. This webinar is being brought to you by IDEXCEL and DataGap, and the speakers for today's webinar are Venkata Dasari, Director of Testing Services with IDEXCEL, and Adi Budavaratu, Director at DataGap. In this webinar, you will learn how to achieve repeatability and 100% test coverage, minimize cost of testing, and deliver high-quality data OBIEE projects in time and on budget using the patented ELV framework. A few tips about the platform we are using to deliver this webinar. Once the presenter starts the webinar, all the phone lines will be put on mute so that we have a clear audio from the presenter. You can ask questions anytime you want on the moderated chat window at the right corner of the screen. And when we run the poll, you can answer on your monitors, and the data will be collated and presented live after the polling time ends. If you miss any part of the webinar, you can visit our website, idexcel.com, and listen to this webinar on demand. Before we start the webinar, we would like to introduce IDEXCEL and DataGap. IDEXCEL is an IT services company providing cutting-edge technology solutions and testing services to Fortune 500 companies since 1998. We are 600 associates strong and have 10 global delivery locations. And we are proud to say that most of our workforce is domain certified, and thus we bring in domain knowledge, technical capabilities, and thought leadership to our client engagements. We are partners with industry-leading technology giants like Oracle, IBM, Microsoft, and HP. And we are also partners with leading solution providers such as DataGap. And DataGap is an innovative company with patented technology in the area of data integration testing. Our products help organizations with testing automation of the data warehouse, data migration, upgrades, and other integration patterns. With that, I welcome Venkat to take over and deliver the webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. First of all, I would like to thank you all for joining us for this webinar. There are a few more attendees joining us. Probably they'll catch up with us pretty soon. If any of you miss this presentation, we will be definitely having this posted on our website, www.idexcel.com, and we'll also be sharing the link for the webinar, recorded webinar, post the presentation. So, first of all, I would like to quickly talk about the agenda for today. We'll be talking about what is data and what is information and what is BI reporting in a very high level. And then we'll talk about, how can we achieve value from BI reporting, One of the major hurdles that we have is, how good you can do regression testing for the BI reports that you create using BI environments. And especially with OBIE platforms, how can you do regression testing? And what are the different scenarios that really warrant testing to be done for these BI reports? And how can the ELV, which is a patented technology, help you comprehensively test your solutions? And finally, we'll be talking about the question. We'll be taking the questions from the audience, and we'll answer them. If there are any questions that we cannot cover during the time that we have, we will definitely respond back with answers to them individually. All right, as Anna said, you can submit your questions towards the right bottom corner of your window where you have this questions tab, and you can expand that and type in your question, and we'll collect the questions during the presentation, and towards the end of the presentation, we'll open the floor for questions. So with that, let's get started. So today's world is a world of data. The reason why I say that is today data is being created or generated at a pace like never before. Data includes your personal data, financial data, business data, accounting, and so on and so forth. So data is what makes companies like Google so powerful, because they have a lot of data, personal data, and all the information that you enter in your write in your emails or share Google searches that you do. That's all the data that Google compiles and saves. Because of the data, that's why it makes Google such a powerful company. And data is, at the end of the day, it's a quintessential asset for any kind of enterprise. The data is collected, and a lot of information can be gathered from the data. So why is data and information different? Data is the elements, but once you put them to a proper use, collate them and try to dissect them, slice and dice them, do some analysis on that. That's when you can create really some information out of the data. So businesses, the success of them really depend on decisions, which in turn depend on the kind of information available for them. This information is actually derived from the data that's gathered. So as I said earlier, slicing and dicing, pivot table analysis, visualizations, and statistical data mining, all this provides the right information necessary for making the right decisions for the businesses. So success from BI, once you have this data, you need to have some platform or a kind of a mechanism from which you can arrive at valuable information that can be utilized by your business to make good judgmental calls and decisions. So we have seen that statistically correct use of business intelligence has actually shown excellent results for the businesses. So on an average, if you see, there's an ROI of more than $10 for every dollar spent on the business analytics. And Febreze, which is the perfume kind of a company that uses BI and for the business campaigns, marketing campaigns, and has generated more than 1 billion sales using this marketing campaign, which is driven basically by the BI, business intelligence. So it is also seen that business intelligence can actually reduce operational expenditure by up to 50%. For the matter, this has been used across the verticals. You can talk about healthcare, e-commerce, non-government organizations, media. Everybody uses business intelligence. And in fact, U.S. government also uses BI to determine the placement of police personnel for the best results. Minimal police force at a critical or advantage points, so that the best results can be achieved for those minimal workforce. So decision making based on BI is very critical for businesses to succeed. While good BI reporting basically helps organization, the defective or erroneous reporting really hurts businesses. So you can achieve all these benefits from BI, but there's a big hurdle in terms of getting the BI reports correct, and it's addressing all the regression that might come with all the changes that might be happening on the data sources or BI reports and all that stuff. So going forward, my friend Adi will walk you through the mechanism for doing proper testing and what kind of tools can be used and what kind of the ELV architecture that can come very handy for doing very proper and thorough methodical BI regression testing. So with that, I would like Adi to take over and continue the presentation. Adi, over to you.
Thanks, Venkat. As Venkat said, getting to the end state of having good business intelligence seems like a dream for many of the organizations that we are working with, because there are a lot of hurdles along the way, and regression is definitely one of the major ones. We are very blessed to be working with companies across verticals, across the globe, and we learn new things every day. So just to be on the same page, before we get deeper, this primary presentation or webinar is about regression testing, and even before we get into OBI at a high level, just to ensure that we are on the same page, primarily regression in software is common. That happens because when some change is introduced, there is an unintended consequence of an unexpected behavior. So let's say we get a patch fix from any vendor, and then we apply that fix. Probably that specific problem is solved, but then something else related to this thing could break. So how can we identify is a major challenge, right? And that is what we mean by regression. As all of you on the call agree, the path to analytics is pretty treacherous. So there is a risk along the way completely. So to begin with, when we talk about source systems like CRM, ERP, financials, we could be having data coming in from flat files, data coming in from web services. So there is an inherent systemic risk in this incoming source itself. And as the data moves within the enterprise from ODS to stage to warehouse into the marts, again, there is an element of risk because the ETL may not have done its job as expected. And there is also an element of risk on the reporting front. The objective of today's webinar is really to focus on this element on the reporting front. Okay, how can we regression test dashboards? How can we regression test reports? What are the common methods which are being used as of now? What are the pitfalls? And then we also suggest an architecture that we call ELV, which is extract, load, and validate. How can we leverage that? And we'll also show you a tool which implements that methodology and brings it to life, which is called as the BI validator. Okay, so if you consider a stable OBI system, typically what happens is on the leftmost side we have dashboards, we have reports, and then when a user requests a particular dashboard, as you all know, it goes to the app server, and then from there to the OBI instance to the presentation server. Then the BI server actually takes that logical query, creates a physical query, hits it, sends it to the database, and the information goes back and forth. If all this is locked, then we have no point of regression. Nothing regresses, everything continues to work as expected. However, this is far from reality. It's really impractical because frequently there will be some level of software changes, hardware upgrades. There will be some customizations which need to be done for specific set of users, bug fixes. Sometimes there is a need for new functionality that seems very enticing for business folks. So we want something new in, let's say, 11.117, 11.1.8, whatever that version is. Obviously, there will be a motivation to actually upgrade to this later version. And of course, there could be changes. The BI may not change at all, but there could be some change on the ETL level or the database schema, which ultimately impacts the report, which is being presented to the end user of the system. So why does regression come into picture when there is a change at, what are the various areas where a change could happen? So we've been working with many customers, and what we're learning is on the front end, simple things, right? JavaScript. So let's say that a specific role requires a new JavaScript function to be implemented. Well, that may work on one browser, but the other browser may really doesn't get it, and it fails to load a specific report. So simple things like that. And as you move along, there could be changes to the OBI platform, so which is the OBI versions of major versions. There could be changes to the RPD. There could be changes to the catalog because of either report naming or any of the content in the dashboards. Or there could even be changes to security, again, intended or unintended. And finally, on the database level, we have DB, ETL changes. So all these are definitely criterion for which there could be a regression risk introduced in the system. So today, the regression can be various forms, functional or performance. And today we are really focused on functional regression. Okay. So just to talk about a couple of scenarios, right? Assume that your current version of OBI is in 11.117, but you know that there is a bug which has been fixed in an upcoming version. Again, we have a tendency, we have some level of motivation to get the latest one, but then there is also an element of fear, because what happens to my existing reports? Will that current bug be fixed, or does it introduce any other latent defects? Does it expose any other latent defects? So this is one simple scenario, a very common scenario for an in-place upgrade. There could also be scenarios for out-of-place upgrades. So let's say we are upgrading from 1.1.3 to 7.1. So this is definitely a major impact. So it's not done typically in the same environment, but we maintain parallel environments, and then we kind of carefully assess the risk and switch over to the latest one. But then a lot of times security can go wrong. A report that is visible, a dashboard or a report that is visible to a specific user prior to this upgrade, probably after the upgrade that doesn't show up, or it throws an error for whatever reason. So how can we identify these issues early on in the system integration testing cycles and address them? Another scenario is an ETL or a database upgrade, right? So consider, let's say, Informatica. We are not changing anything on the reporting front, but then we are upgrading the ETL tool, whatever you're using, from one version to another. If it's PL SQL, we keep changing the PL SQL to accommodate the business needs, and something changes. But how confident are we that actually these changes did not break anything on the reporting front? Right? And it's again a very similar scenario, a very common scenario, some change to an RPD. Let's say that we want to bring in a new dimension into a subject area. What is the impact of this? How can we really address all these things? Does it break the physical query? Is there any performance impact because of this new dimension which has been introduced into the subject area? And same thing, I don't want to, but you get the idea. I don't have to drill down into the details, but modifying reports will also induce some level of risk into the system. So this regression testing, ideally speaking, is just comparing the before and after and ensuring that we are all aligned, right? Sounds very simple. So we take, let's say we have had number of dashboards, reports. We just get those dashboards and reports before any change is made and then compare them after the change is made. Very easy. But then the problem with that is it takes too much of time, as we'll just discover. And the methods that we are coming across as we are working with multiple customers, one way is we leverage a script like runcat.sh, which gets the logical queries. So before any change is made, we can run this command, get the logical queries, benchmark them, right? So we benchmark them. Basically, we have a copy of this particular logical query in our system. And then you make a change, and then you compare the logical queries. So you compare the logical query before the change to the one which is after the change is made. If they are, say, they look exactly the same, great, no problem. Right? So this is one example or one method which is followed. And the other method is enqueueCMD. Most of the folks on the calls are probably aware of this. So we can actually issue a command line prompt, command line thing to invoke and get the data sets from the report, right? So we can issue this enqueueCMD, pass in the parameters, and then get the actual data set for the reports, benchmark them. Again, very similar to the logical query. You can actually baseline the content, baseline the data set, and then you get, after the change is made, you go back to the system, get the runtime, the latest one, and then ensure that the data sets match. So that works. But then the problem with that, and many of the patterns that we are seeing in the field, one, we are actually talking about very small data sets. Whether it is the number of reports or whether it is the number of dashboards, you cannot actually go ahead and do the complete testing for all the dashboards in your system. It takes an enormous amount of time, very painful, right? There's a lot of manual eyeballing. So one of the examples of manual eyeballing that we notice in the field is that, let's say that you have 200 dashboards, and then you apply a change, let's say an in-place upgrade. And after the in-place upgrade, you want to ensure that none of my dashboards have regressed. So we noticed the patterns whereby folks are basically printing out reports, printing out dashboards prior to the change, and then after the change is made, they actually manually eyeball the dashboards and make sure that they're aligned. But it's very painful and it's very error prone. Just imagine a dashboard with 7 or 8 reports. It makes it extremely difficult to be able to compare all the numbers, to compare all the UI elements and everything, where folks, testing teams typically spend an enormous amount of time. And there is also a significant amount of custom programming. Let's say that there is Selenium, or for load testing, we have come across situations where customers are using JMeter and other tools. So there are free tools like JMeter, which can be customized to address the problem of stress testing, or there could be even Load Runner, which is a generic tool that where we can hit it against the OBI server, get the details, and spit out few reports on that. But then maintaining these tools over a period of time is extremely painful. You need to have resources, typically a Java resource or a custom scripting resource. Again, to maintain the scripts will take time. Maintaining the people will also be very expensive, right? So our objective is to really address these challenges. How can first is we notice that it is very tedious and time consuming. The commands that I talked about earlier, they're all command line driven. Obviously, there'll be lower productivity because you need to figure out your own ways of storing the logical queries, of storing the data sets, and how do you automate this comparison, how do you spit out the results, how do you keep the folks, all the stakeholders involved in the specific project informed about the quality, right? So these are the few issues, and our goal is to really eliminate that. So the solution for that, what we call as the ELV architecture. This is a patented architecture. So we extract, whether it is data set or a dashboard or a report, it doesn't matter, but we extract it first. And then we load it into our specific platform, and then we run a bunch of rules to ensure that we are able to validate the data sets or the reports or the dashboards. So this is what the pictorial representation is. So ELV, extract, the E stands for extract, get the data, reports, PDFs, load it into a database, into our own tool or wherever you're planning to, and then validate and ensure that the results, the actual matches to the expected. So the value proposition from BI Validator, which is a tool which realizes the ELV architecture, is called BI Validator. The whole objective is how can we enable 100% test coverage. Let's say that you have 250, 300 dashboards. How can we give the confidence to business that all these dashboards will work as expected after the change is made? How can we validate 100% of the dashboards or the reports, data, etc.? How can we simplify it, right? How can we eliminate the programming concept? How can we make it simple drag and drop for the users? So we provide a means. I'll show you in just a second. And then how can we help customers achieve repeatability, right? It's not a one-time thing. You may want to execute the tests. Let's say that you have periodic deployments, at the end of every quarter or at the end of every month, which is very common, right? So you get a new CRs, you take those CRs, implement them, and then you roll out all the CRs as a patch into your internal deployment model at the end of every quarter. So how can you may want to test on a repeatable basis. How can you ensure that you have a consistent framework to actually repeat these tests on a periodic basis, right? And ultimately, the whole objective of this ensuring regression testing is to really build enterprise trust. How can we give confidence to the business users that whatever IT teams are delivering will hold good, and they feel confident about using those dashboards and reports as part of the decision making. With that, let me bring up the product itself, BI Validator. So by the way, this is scheduled for a longer period of time, but I think we'll save you some time today and leave you early. So this is what we call as the BI Validator. So this is right now catered to Oracle Business Intelligence customer. We have a number of customers using this tool as of today, and pretty excited about that. So as you see here, there are a couple of test plans that you can build out of this product. On the left side, what you notice is the same list of test plans. You have a BI dashboard, which is a dashboard kind of a test plan, a report for testing reports, upgrade test plan. It need not be really an upgrade, but it could be something about comparing reports across multiple environments, which is a very common practice for let's say a customer, the market, most of them have moved on from 10G to 11G, but still there are a number of customers, big implementations, still on 10G waiting for an upgrade. So how can you be confident about your upgrade? You can leverage this test plan. And then we have another thing called stress test plan, which we're not going to talk about today, but the objective of this is we really want to eliminate custom programming. How can we make it easy for users to just go through a couple of clicks and create a test plan where they'll be able to predict the system's behavior as more and more concurrent users access the system? How would the system behave if 500 users are there, concurrent users? How would the system behave if 1,000 concurrent users? How would it behave if there are 2,000 users, right, concurrent users? So this is what stress testing will help you with. And then catalog, the catalog test plan, the objective of this is, let's say that we are moving content from one environment to another, and then you want to be confident that only the expected content moved and nothing unexpected just crept into the cracks, right? Slipped through the cracks. So BI catalog test plan will help you identify and ensure that only the expected content is going from a lower environment to an upper environment. Okay. And here at the bottom, what you notice is these are my connections. These are my BI connections. There are two on Amazon. One is a 10G, the other is a 11G, and the local. I also have we support all environments. On the local, I have a 10G, so I'm just going to show you 1 or 2 quick examples using my local one, just because it's faster. So here are your connections, and defining new connections is very easy. How do we connect to BI? It's all we care for is the dashboard URL. So here you can give it a connection name. You can specify what is the URL for your dashboards, username, password. If you want to impersonate, you can do that as well, and that's about it. So we hit the OBI server for all kinds of test plans only through web services. Right? We do that, and let's say we get into the dashboard test plan, just to give you an idea. My objective is I made some change, and I want to ensure that, or even before I make a change, I want to ensure that my pre and post dashboards look alike. Okay, so let's say that I pick one connection here, and then I go to the next screen. Here I can drag and drop additional dashboards from the left side. I can just do the drag and drop. There are multiple ways of selecting dashboards. So let's try to create a new one instead of creating this old one. So I'm just doing that again. I'm selecting a local. Okay, so it's a blank space. I don't have anything here. So to add dashboards, I have multiple methods here. One, I can just pick this particular folder which says country managers, and I can drag and drop them into the white area. So what I'm doing is I just selected a bunch of dashboards, and now when it says creating, we are actually tying it back to the ELV architecture. We are actually hitting the OBI server and taking PDF snapshots of those dashboards. Okay. So we hit the OBI server and then take PDF snapshots of the dashboards. So just to show you one here, if I just select sales trends, this is what it would show up like, right? So I just took a snapshot of that. Of course, there are multiple ways to add dashboards. You can always change with additional parameters. That's not a problem. You can import all the dashboards from a CSV file. A number of customers do that. Basically, there are 300, 400 dashboards. You don't want to. Even a drag and drop would be pretty painful. So it's easier to actually do it once, export it into a flat file, and then import it back into the tool at the time of testing, right? So right now what I did was I benchmarked all these dashboards, and now I have a reference copy. Once I do that, technically speaking, theoretically, now I go back and apply a change, whether it's an in-place upgrade or whatever it is. I can go and make that change. And just to show you the difference, I'm modifying the user to Karen here because Karen has a different visibility. So once you make the change, you come back to the same test plan, and then all you need to do is go to the next screen and click on the run, right? So when I click on the run, what's happening is the tool automatically is comparing the baseline version, which is actually the snapshot before the change is made. It's comparing that to the dashboard which is after the change. And if there are no differences, no problem. You're all set. You don't have to worry about them. But if there are differences, then you can actually click on the select trends. I can see the differences. So notice that this is displayed. All the differences are displayed in a very user-friendly manner, whereby the differences are highlighted in pink color. So I can focus only on the numbers or the words. So I can just say that, hey, the percentage of change here says 2.92 prior to the change, but after I did an in-place upgrade, I should not see anything, but for whatever reason, I see a 0.7, right? If this is understandable, if this is expected, then the user can move on to the next test plan or look at another report. Whereas if it is not expected, then there is something of concern, and the testing teams have enough material to actually work with the engineering. So you can compare words, you can compare differences. Obviously, if something is different, they're all displayed here in a visual way so that it's easy for the teams to understand. There are multiple options that are provided. Okay. So this objective of the webinar is to really focus on the process and just to highlight what are the typical scenarios that we encounter during regression, and to give you a flavor for the ELV architecture, and just to show you one simple example of the functional regression, right? So this way, We can do dashboard testing. The same concept can be applied to reports. You can actually bring in all the reports. So if I click on this and then I select the connection and move on to the next screen, notice that at the report level, we can actually compare PDFs or data. I have both options. So if I have data, then I can move on to the next screen, and then I can actually drag and drop the same folder. But now what you will notice is that instead of just 4 or 5 dashboards in the folder, we are actually navigating through all the reports which are part of the dashboards, and then we get all the reports, we hit the OBI server, get the data back, and that is how we are able to do the same regression testing again. So this is at a dashboard level. And the process is very similar, whether it is dashboards, reports, stress testing, multi-environment, everything is drag and drop, very easy, which simplifies your life. Okay? So hopefully that gives you a flavor for the tool and for the capabilities in the tool. At this point, before we get into the Q&A, few other aspects that I would like to highlight. So we have a server which takes care of scheduling. So essentially any of the test plans can be scheduled and run periodically over time. There is a notification mechanism whereby all the stakeholders who need to be informed of the project will be informed whenever a test plan fails. Then what else do we support as of now? It's Windows-based. It's not a cloud-based thing or a web-based thing yet. So it's an on-premise implementation, just to set your expectations and give you a heads up. With that, Venkat and Anna, I think we can take up any questions that folks may have.
Wonderful, Adi. Anna, do you have any questions?
Yep, we do have a few questions. The first one, what are the various BI platforms that BI Validator supports?
So as of now, we support Oracle Business Intelligence, but as part of our roadmap, we want to extend it to other BI platforms like Business Objects, which is coming up very soon, and probably MicroStrategy as well at some point. But at this point of time, Q1 2014 calendar year, we support Oracle Business Intelligence, all versions of Oracle Business Intelligence.
Okay. And does the tool internally leverage any of the commands you mentioned earlier?
Our integration with OBI is primarily through web services. So we do not, while they do exactly the same thing, we do not get into the command line integration. This is at a higher level. So we hit the OBI server through web services. That's about it.
Okay. And you showed a demo of how BI Validator can be used to do stress testing of the BI dashboards. How does it compare with JMeter?
Right. So most of the customers that we have been talking to, they have either LoadRunner or JMeter already in use. But like I said during the presentation, what's happening is that they become very difficult to maintain over time. Whenever there are new dashboards, new reports come in, so there is additional programming that has to be done, additional resources who need to maintain that code or look into that code and make the changes. So definitely JMeter and all require code. This one absolutely has no programming. This is all drag and drop, everything through the user interface. That is one of our fundamental paradigms on how we wanted to build this product, and that is how it is. So everything is drag and drop. Even as stress testing, though I did not show it to you, there are a couple of videos on YouTube. If anybody is interested, you can email us and we'll forward the slides to you. But the stress testing, just by drag and drop, you select a bunch of runs and number of concurrent users per run, and then you run it. You have the reports with you. So you can predict how the system is going to behave as you have more and more concurrent users. So it's all simple, UI-driven, very easy to use compared to JMeter.
Okay. And can the tests be scheduled?
Yep, absolutely. Because again, going back to typically how it's done is everybody is following agile process, and they want to be able to run a series of tests at the end of every sprint, whether it is 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, doesn't matter. So the ability to schedule test plans is already baked into the product. There is a server component that takes care of all the scheduling and ensuring that all the test plans are run as designed, as expected. Yep. And
does it integrate with Quality Center?
So Quality Center, we get this requirement quite often, but Quality Center, we don't have it yet. That is part of our roadmap. Hopefully, towards the end of in Q2 calendar year, we should be able to get that project in, so that users can actually get the requirements and then track it back from a traceability matrix, and it's easier for testing teams as well to file bugs. So we will have that integration in the future, near future, but we don't have it as of today.
Okay. And that's the questions that I have seen come through so far. Venkat?
Sure. So for all the participants, if you have any other questions, you definitely can send an email to either me or Adi, and we'll definitely be able to get back to you with the answers. And if you want to see a a demo of the product completely, you can definitely talk to us, and we'll schedule a special time with you to showcase the product and talk to you about how we can do the testing for you. And with that, I think, Adi, I would like to conclude the session. Just as a recap, what we talked about is, the importance of BI reporting, and the regression that will happen because of any of the changes that happens in the setup of BI setup. It might be any of the layers that Adi was talking to you about. So regression is unavoidable. But so you need to make sure that you have a thorough practice in place, testing practice in place, and mechanisms in place to identify any kind of this regression kind of issues, and create the right reports that really provide value back to your organization, and be profitable from this BI reporting and data analysis and information analysis. So at the end of the day, because of the volume of testing that needs to be done, regression is huge regression to be done. So automation is the only way to go forward, because automation reduces all your effort and make sure that there are no human errors creeping into the process when you do the testing. So the ELV is the right architecture, and the BI validator is the right tool for doing a lot of this testing that's required for BI reports. Adi, do you want to add anything else before we conclude the session?
No, that's you captured the essence of it, Venkat. I think we did.
Great. All right. Then thanks a lot for everybody for joining us for the session today. And as I said earlier, we'll be definitely hosting this on our website, and we'll be providing you the link after that after it's hosted, and we'll be able to you'll be able to watch it at your leisure in the future if you want to. And as I said earlier, if you have any questions, please do drop an email to us, and we'll be able to get back to you with answers. Thanks a lot, John, for joining us for the session today, and have a good day, rest of the day. Thank you very much.